Hi, I'm Mark Aaron, and I am launching a talk show called Good Vibes and Libes. My first guest, Andrew Segal, is a longtime innovator in commercial real estate, and in more recent years, he's also become a software entrepreneur. Now, the first part of this interview you're about to see, we actually shot just over 6 years ago. We had a great time, and then several projects intervened for me, so I'm just getting around to launching this now. But we're going to watch that. It was from November of 2016. Then we're going to come back to the present, March 2023, and Andrew will give us some updated views of what he discussed back then. So before we look at the interview from 2016, let me first say thanks for coming back to the library, Andrew.
I think it's great to be back here. It just feels like a lot of the things, that we were predicting and that we were talking about. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. But it's just, I find it very funny to be back in the same place, revisiting the same thing.
What about how we look?
Oh, we are much better looking. I mean, ever since our eyesight started degrading, we look so much better than we did.
Well, we both lost a little weight since then.
We did.
Yeah, we look younger now.
Much younger.
In the words of Bob Dylan, we were so much older then. We're younger than that now. All right. So here is episode 1 of Good Vibes and Libes with guest Andrew Segal coming up. Hi, welcome to Good Vibes and Libes. I'm Mark Aaron, and on this, my inaugural episode, I'm here with my very good friend Andrew Segal. We've been friends since the summer of 1981.
That sounds correct.
Yeah,
Wow.
at the Orm camp, remember?
It was so long ago you had to say 19.
Yeah, that's right. And Andrew's the founder of Boxer Property, which he founded in 1992 in Dallas. A very innovative commercial real estate company. I guess you were a wunderkind. I mean, right away. Featured in Forbes magazine in 1998 for what you were doing with Boxer Property. And it's spread. It's all over the country now.
Yes, it's spread. You make it sound so disease-like.
It's an epidemic.
Well, it goes up and down. So we go through times when we're buying things, and then times when we're selling. But it's at its largest it's been for a while.
That's amazing. I found a couple of pictures of us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I just came across these recently.
Oh my God!
What do you think of that?
That is hilarious. That was fun.
I remember you winning a medal in, was it NASCAR? Was that what those
Yeah,
races
yeah.
were?
Well, it was one of my few skills as a Canadian.
But I remember you telling me how your father taught you to ski as a kid.
Yes, with false confidence.
Well, what did he do?
So what he would do is he would hold me between his legs when I was like 2 years old and 3 years old, and he would ski really fast with me between his legs, kind of holding me. So I had, if you're looking forward, I was like Leonardo DiCaprio at the front of the Titanic going, I'm king of the world. I'm moving fast and I realize there's a whole ship behind me. And luckily he didn't fall. Had he fallen, my life would have been very different, I think. he probably would have crushed me. I'd be walking with a cane. But I had this impression that I could ski very fast and on very hard, or as a 3-year-old would think, and it was not true.
So he's teaching you to be fearless.
He was giving me a false sense of security, which worked out very well, but it didn't mean that it was the right thing to do.
Now, you're from Montreal originally.
Yes.
There were some good movies about Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz.
Yes, that was a classic. Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz was filmed like 2 doors down from where I lived. That was about Westmount. It was about young, real estate ambitious
That was
guys
Richard Dreyfuss.
in Westmount. Yeah.
Did that have an impact on you, that film? Or
Well, that was, that kind of, I'm going to make money, I'm going to do real estate, I'm going to make deals, that was us in Montreal.
one thing I remember, when I met you, I was 14. Maybe you were 13. But you were obsessed with real estate already.
Yes.
And, I remember driving on the bus up to Riverdale. You had a book, a hardcover book you were reading on real estate. It was your father's book. It was underlined. It was an old book. And, you just think, we had to drive through Harlem to go up to Riverdale, what they could do with that area. Harlem's actually now undergone all sorts of new developments in recent years. But back then you were saying they could do that over there and this here. And, that's pretty unusual for a kid. You obviously had a vision.
Well, I was always interested in it because I grew up with a father who was in the business. So he would come home and talk about real estate, and I would go to his office.
Where was this now?
This was originally in Montreal. Unfortunately, I didn't do any real estate in New York. So I was a big real estate theorist, but not a practitioner. In fact, he sold virtually all of his real estate before I was out of college.
So he didn't do any in New York?
No.
It was all up in Montreal?
No, in Florida, New Orleans.
Okay.
Just the apartment. He sold everything in 1985 and then went looking for a big deal that he never found.
Right. So you got fascinated with the idea of real estate.
Yes. Yeah. So it was very interesting when the theory met the reality. It was very jolting.
How consonant were the two? Were they very disparate, the theory and reality, or were they?
Well, in theory, they're the same, as Yogi Berra says. In reality, they're much different. I think in hindsight, I was a pseudo-intellectual. In other words, that's how I would look back at it. And the sense of confidence did serve me well, and I think serves people well. But I thought that I knew more about the actual world than I did, and I probably knew more theory than people thought I knew, but less practice. I had this misperception that just by studying something, you're going to know how to do it. And I went out and bought an office building, and it was very discombobulating and difficult, and it didn't all fall into place like I thought it would, and it was a lot of actual work.
Oh, you didn't think it was going to be any work?
No, I thought it was going to be work, but I thought it was going to be work in theory, not in practice. I didn't assume that I would be living in a $19 motel driving a $275 car. That wasn't my vision.
So this was 1992.
It was 1992.
You were out of college, out of law school.
Yes, so I left law school. I left for Texas the day after my last exam. So I took the exam and I left, and I went to Texas because I thought that you're supposed to go to the South, which my father had done in the 70s, and buy real estate in a depressed market. So I found a depressed market, went there, found a building, and bought it. But it was empty, and it was losing a tremendous amount of money.
This was an office building.
It was an office building. And I thought that it would be much less difficult to run the office building. It was 110,000 square feet. So I had not really run anything bigger than my rented apartment before. And I got into this thing, and it was kind of scary and difficult. And what's interesting is that had I known what I know now, I would have never done that. It was crazy to go buy a vacant office building with no experience.
But that became your business, buying either vacant or I don't know if they were derelict or if they were whatever they were, office buildings, right?
Yeah. So they always had problems. So like I always started with failure, and turned them around. So the model, like it took me about, I mean, it felt like a lifetime, but it was really 6 to 9 months to really get this thing stabilized and get some income and be able to go do more deals. And then I just spent years repeating the same story, just in different places, different buildings.
How old were you when you bought that first building?
I was 92, so I would have been about 25.
You know, you're talking about the South, but it was also the West. Because I remember you at the time describing it to me as the Wild West, as opposed to New York, which had so much government control and intervention on the real estate market, and you felt like you could go out there and things were much freer.
Right. Well, it was also, you know, it had gotten so beaten up by the market that anyone who was competent in real estate was broke. Basically, everyone who was in real estate had lost virtually everything. So the competition was very, very. I'm not going to say easy. You know, I'm about to insult Southerners, which I won't do. But I could just say this: is that, you know, you show up in a place like Dallas, and there may have been two or three people in the whole city who could do a certain deal. You know, in New York, I could walk into a deli and there'd be 2 or 3 people who could do the deal, or more. You know, so the competition was, was far less, less out there in the hinterlands.
Well, first of all, where did you have the capital to buy a building?
So the first deal, I took all of my mother's savings and I put it into the building, but I forgot to save money to run the building. So I had to scramble. I was literally paying the electric bill at the Spanish grocery store so that I could get 3 or 4 more days of time before the check cashed.
So this was, first of all, this is an incredible show of confidence that your mother gave you. Your parents had gotten divorced.
Yes, so they had gotten divorced. She took all of her money. It was not confidence, it was recklessness. I mean, it was just in hindsight, just because it's like going to Las Vegas and you win and you go, you see, I told you I have a method.
She gave you the entirety of her divorce settlement.
Yes.
And you took it.
And I took it and I bought a building, but didn't really plan on having money to run the building.
So it cost you the entirety of her.
Yes.
So she had nothing after that.
She had nothing except an IOU. It was like Dumb and Dumber. She had an IOU from her son, secured by a building that was hemorrhaging cash.
That's an amazing show of confidence that she had in you.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that it was correct.
Well, evidently it was. I hope you paid her back.
Don't let the results.
Did you pay her back with interest?
Yes. So she got paid back.
So she did fine.
Yes, no, it turned out to be a happy story. And then the next time, when I needed more money, I called people I knew in college who had nice cars. I just figured if they had a nice car, there was a trust fund in there somewhere.
Unless all the money went into the car.
And then I found a guy who was, really, I would say the smartest guy in real estate who I've met. His name was Jim Neal, and he was in the business of raising money for commercial deals. And I turned him into the trust fund that I always deserved, as I just made him get all the money for all the deals. And I went on a buying spree and bought millions of square feet, just telling him I need all the money.
So it was his trust fund?
No, it wasn't. He was able to tell my story in a way that that I wasn't. So he started with some of his own money and some individuals. We did a deal with a enterprising banker, and then finally tapped into Wall Street, who was funding huge percentages of the deal with no guarantees. But they did okay. My loans got paid back.
Does your mother ever, has she ever said it was crazy what she did?
Yes, she has. I think she realizes it a little more in hindsight.
Well, I remember at your wedding, she said, I always knew Andrew was going to be successful.
It didn't mean that she was right.
Well, if she knew it, she was right.
Well,
If she were wrong, she wouldn't have known.
everyone who buys a lottery ticket knows that those are the numbers that are going to win. And one person is right, it doesn't make them smarter than the other ones. So I'm just being honest. Is like sometimes you look back and say, look, if I had known what I knew now, that wasn't necessarily the most prudent way of doing things, or even in the top 5% of prudent things.
Yeah. So what's going on with software?
So we went through and it was largely driven by my brother's experience. He had spent some time in Silicon Valley, and we were very interested in process as kind of a way of expanding a company into all these different locations where you couldn't be in charge. So we developed software using our 1,300 employees as guinea pigs. And we ended up with this thing that no one else had. And it was this unifying piece of software.
Right, now go through the steps. Ron, are you ready, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Okay, so here are all of the cities that we have buildings in. So I could look at my list of cities.
So you went to properties first, and then
Yes.
you got, okay.
And I'm going to pick Chicago, and I'm going to pick a building in Chicago. So this is all my information about the building. So I may want to know there's 150 buildings. Who's the manager today? Who's responsible for this building? I would go to employees. The manager is always in red. I can open him up. There's Dan Joyce. Now I could touch a button and call him. If I touch cell, it will just dial him. Or I could see anything about who his supervisor is. I could show his to-do list. So this is Dan's to-do list. So if Dan gets run over by a car, I could take his to-do list and just port it onto someone else. Or if I send Dan to Cleveland.
So Dan, you're expendable, just so we've made that clear.
Well, but I'm also capturing all of Dan's thoughts, and all of his reactions and all of his notes on everything that he's doing. So here's...
Are people going to
Here's what's
be
available.
fully forthcoming with all their thoughts and everything?
Well, it captures all the emails, it captures all the activities, it captures every time you look at something. So here are suites that are available. I could see whether they're ready to move into or they need some work.
So you better be careful of what you're emailing to people.
That's right.
This is 1984.
Yes, it's 2024, I think. So here's a button that shows everything that anyone is asking me to do that I haven't done yet. And some of them are very complex, and some of them are just a question. So here's a button. Here's how to do everything in the company. So here's an electrical panel. We're going to check. We're going to do an infrared scan of an electrical panel, and I'm going to tell you why we're doing it. I'm going to show you what you're going to see. And then I'm going to give you the ability to give me some feedback about this, because people like to give feedback, is that they want to be the author. So I can rate this section of our manual of how to do everything, and I could give the author stars and feedback. The author could see who's read it and who hasn't read it.
It's incredible.
It's very very interesting.
And what other things you got here? Created by me. What is that?
Okay, so this is a list of everything I've asked anyone to do
Okay.
that's not done yet.
Okay.
Now, I don't have to ask them what's going on because I could just open up the case and I could see what's going on with it. I could see all the correspondence. I could see anyone who touched it. I could see drawings or bids or diagrams. So here's a big long case about something or other. And it could be flying around to all different people in the company. Someone may ask me to approve something. So I just hit a button and I could hit approve. And now the accounting department knows it's coming. The building manager knows it's coming. But we don't differentiate between...
Let's see the other things. You don't differentiate between what?
Between my printer doesn't work and I'm buying a building.
I see.
Or...
Now go back to the main page again. All right. So what else do you got here?
So one of the things I could do is if I want to make a case, I can always take I'm going to go to a picture that I took. So here's an electronics thing that I may want to put in my offices. So what I can do is I can share that. So I see something that I like, I want it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it into a case. So now it's going to be a task. It could be like a question. I can, this is hard to do upside down.
I saw a question.
Yeah, it's a question. So I'm going to take the picture, and I'm going to ask that my conference room have one of these. So I make it into a case. I have a fake title. I'm going to just type something and save it, and now it's become a case. I can assign it to someone. I could send it to the hopper, and now I don't have to think about it again because I know that someone's saying I won't assign that because it's going to confuse someone. So anyway, it's become interesting and liberating to have everything on my phone and to be able to approve things and not have to ask people 100 questions, to know very clearly what every single person in the company is doing, to be able to look at people's workload, to be able to subscribe to things that I find interesting. Like if I want to follow a project, I can get an update every time someone does something with it, like a news feed. And it was almost unbelievable even to us. It's like we couldn't believe that we were the only people who had come up with this. And it came out of nowhere. It was like some real estate company in Texas. Now, as a fearless young person, of course, it was very plausible that I could invent anything. And Justin the same. But even we doubted it. And we started showing it to people. We actually showed it a little bit by mistake, is that we would bring people in to show them our company and show them what we were doing and show them the properties, and they would zero in on the software product, which we would use to kind of illustrate things. And they would go, what is that? How does that work? And could I use that in my bank? And, can I use that in my company? So we went on a track of thinking of it in a very abstract way. And last year offered it to a gigantic company. And we were surprised by two things. Number one, they took it. Number two, they took it to replace the largest enterprise software. They had done an $80 million installation of a software by a company called SAP, and they ended up suing the company for fraud. And they got their $80 million back, and now they're using our system. So it was really exciting. So the software thing became very interesting when we realized that no one else was doing this. And we started giving it and licensing it and selling it to very large companies. So we're on this wild adventure where these huge companies are taking it, and we have a state in Mexico that agreed to install it, the state of Sonora, and universities and Fortune 500, two Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest private companies. And it's this great adventure that will, be either gigantic or kind of wither away.
What's the name of the software?
The software we called Stemmons. Now,
Stemmons.
Stemmons was named after a man in Dallas who deeded a freeway that had the first building that I bought, which I named my cat after.
Stemmons?
Yes. So my first real cat was named Stemmons, and that's what I think of when I think of the company name. Everyone else thinks of either the freeway or just the word Stemmons.
Now, what are you doing? We're in New York. What are you doing in New York today? You live in Houston.
Houston. So what I'm doing now are pitches. So I have a series of meetings where I meet with very large companies and talk to them about the software and try and get them to use it.
And who did you meet with today?
Today we met with a construction company and one of the largest banks in the world. Those were the two key meetings, and a real estate development company that owns sports franchises. So I had three meetings. Phenomenal.
I'm glad you squeezed me in. The meetings went well?
They went extremely well. And, it looks like one of them is already put it in their budget for next year. They're committed and going down the road, and the other two look like they're going to test it. So it's very surprising to be able to walk into. I mean, just for me, I feel like I'm going to be discovered for, security is going to come and take me away and going, who do you think you are trying to sell software to run, the largest companies in the world? But so far it's working.
Who do you think you are? The same guy you thought you were in 1992 when you bought that building.
Yes, I have delusions of grandeur, and I'm ready to let someone disprove.
You read a lot of Ayn Rand, I guess. Amazing. When did it start?
Well, we started using it about 5 years ago internally, and last year was the first time we offered it to someone else.
Right now it's 2016, so
2015.
2015.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. One interesting thing about you, Andrew, is you were the first guy I knew who had a home computer. And I would not have gotten a single college application in if it weren't for you typing them up on your computer, because I didn't know how to type yet. No one did.
No.
The teachers at Riverdale were begging me to learn because of my handwriting.
Yeah, no, having a computer early was actually very funny because, first of all, we had this huge misperception of what it did. Is that, I thought when I would open up this computer and put it on my desk, it would become my friend and it would run the household. And I kind of had images of this kind of interactive thing with this smart thing. And it took me about a year to get it to count to 10. And then finally, its true meaning came out when the first video game came out that was good, Castle Wolfenstein. That's an old one. And then we used it to type, which was fun. It didn't have a spell checker, but it saved a lot of time.
Which you needed.
Which I needed.
Yeah, that was not your forte.
Still,
I had to really check your spelling. But you could type. You could touch type.
I wrote a paper on inflation once, and I spelled money wrong.
Wow.
Yes. No. It
didn't
it's
stop
a problem.
you from making anything.
I'm still looking for it. But the funniest thing about the computer is that there was a point where FedEx came out with this great idea, and it used to take a long time to mail things around the country. So what they said is that you can, with their modem, you could attach to FedEx. You could type a letter. They would print it out in the city that you wanted the letter to go to, and then they would drop it in the mail for you. But they said if someone else had this system, it was called Zapmail, you could just send them a message without going through the mail. And it would just show up on their computer. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. We're going to be like talking to people around the world. So we signed up, we got it. I got my code word, logged on. I never, ever, ever had another person I knew who had it. So it was like having the first telephone. but
Was
there was
this
no
like
one to call.
like an email thing or
It was email, but it was like 1982 or 3, and FedEx finally just shut it down.
Wow.
So I was first on computers and squandered the whole thing.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, what would you have done with it?
Well, like I should have been Bill Gates, you know, like I should have. It took me till I was almost 50 years old to get into technology.
Well, that's the thing. You, after years of real estate, are now coming full circle. You're getting back into computer, which is, as I say, you were the first guy. Now, we're talking about, I mean, I graduated high school in 1984. You had one, those applications.
1980.
You had one in 1980?
Yes.
Home computer?
Yeah.
It was PC, what you had.
No, it was an Apple.
It was an Apple?
Yeah, that was the other thing I missed. I should have bought the stock. I was using an Apple. You know, I had a computer so early that we invited the headmistress of my elementary school to my house to see it.
Oh my gosh.
And she looked at it and she said, you know, someday these could be in schools.
Wow.
And then I moved to California. You know, I was over at someone's house in California. We couldn't get an Apple, what do they call it, the Macintosh to print. So we called Steve Jobs.
Really?
And he told us how to get it to print, and it printed. It was that early on. That was 84 or 85. And I guess I wasn't paying attention. I should have been in computers earlier. So I guess the things that I learned about now.
Imagine what you could have been, Andrew.
Well, the things I learn about now, I'm going to do when I'm 90.
Well, I
So
mean,
give me some good ideas.
You don't seem to be at a lack for good ideas. Let's go back to a second to school. So it was a Mac. We wrote those papers on a Mac?
No, it was an Apple II.
It was an Apple II. Okay,
Yeah.
but it was
an Apple. Yeah.
You remember the famous Apple commercial came out in the Super Bowl of
84.
'84.
Right.
That incredible commercial.
Yes.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
How do you remember our life, you know, 1983, 1984 in Manhattan back then?
Well, I think, you know, it was like a kid's version of My Dinner with Andre.
That's
You know,
great.
We would have these great conversations, and we would do things, and we were adventurous. As like the two of us had a lot of game, and I think that we had you know, we had this experience that felt like some kind of John Hughes movie. Like it felt like we were doing something, you know, significant, and we were having deep conversations, and we were learning, you know, big things and making big discoveries. And it felt like, you know, someone should be filming this, but no one really cared.
Now we got it.
Yeah, now someone's filming this, and let's see if anyone cares.
You know, you're obviously a visionary, and you always have been. And I wonder, like, how these things come to you. I mean, is it something you hear? Is it auditory? Is it visual? Is it kinesthetic? Something you feel? Do you go into some kind of dream state? Do you dream these things? I mean, you always had visions of what you were going to do.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of ideas, you know, which is funny because I consider myself a process person. You know, some people are just idea people, and they have like these great ideas, but they don't really have the execution.
Right.
And I've always found the execution very, very interesting. In fact, I think that there's a big misperception is that people outside of the business world think that the idea carries the day. That I have this idea, and then it's like just a money machine, you know, because of the idea. And other people like me think the idea is, you know, making money on an idea is virtually impossible. Is like I could take something that's the oldest business, and I'm not talking about prostitution, I'm talking about the fact that they had to do it somewhere, so it's real estate. And just take a 10,000-year business and do it better than my peers. So I have these ideas, and the funny thing is I feel like I've done a lot of things. I had this idea about a Hispanic shopping experience, and I built a 1.2 million square foot mall. You know, I had this idea about the process and software. I mean, process in the real estate business, and we did it. I had a theory about doing downtown spaces. I've started restaurants. So I love the fact that I can take ideas and make them materialize and then kind of run without me. You know, it's fun. I'm working on an idea now. I have a concept for reimagining the entire restaurant, like the whole. And there's not a lot of original in it, but it's an original to take them all and put it together. Is I want to have a restaurant that has no waiters, that everything's on your phone, and everyone's price is different. If you're interesting, your price will be less, and if you're not interesting, your price will be more. Why not?
Hey, I'd get a free meal.
You'd get a free meal, and the idea is that there's no waiter, there's no. You look on your phone and what the chef is making is available. When it's not available, it disappears from your phone, and you order it, you pay on your phone, and you tell it where you want the food delivered. It could be somewhere in the office building, it could be at a table number 7 in the restaurant or at the park across the street. And I think it's going to be so fun, and I have this vision of how it's going to be, and the fun part is that I'm actually doing it. Like I've hired a chef, I'm under construction, we're developing the app, and my kids will virtually not go out to dinner with me because all I talk about is how frustrating it is to wave at a guy and have him come over and hand him my credit card and go back, and it's like, it's so antiquated. And we're gonna deal with other things. Like, I think it's crazy that food has to come out together. You know, like when you sit down with dinner with someone, the food is supposed to arrive at the same time. Like, it's some gigantic problem if your food arrives before my food. You know.
Well, it's a problem if your food arrives before my food. That's a problem.
But like,
my food arrives before your food. It's not.
Why? Why is that a rule? If I came from outer space and redid the restaurant, I would say the food will arrive when it arrives. You eat, I'll talk. And then we'll switch.
That was a whole Larry David episode about that.
Of what? The food?
Someone bought, for a charity raffle, got to have lunch with Larry David. And his food came before the others. And he ate it. The guy wanted his check back.
That's what's going to happen with my restaurant. And I'm going to ignore the customers. I'm not going to have a name for a year.
I was going to ask, what's the name of this thing?
It doesn't have a name. It's not going to come when you call it. You know, it's a restaurant. We're going to see what the people call it.
Where are you going to do this?
In Dallas. It's at 1910 Pacific.
Why Dallas?
Because I wanted to create a culture in a building. You know, I kind of asked myself, like, how can I take an office building and make it more interesting? You know, in other words, how do I differentiate myself from just being another box? I'm just putting people in boxes made out of sheetrock and they're working in there. You know, I could decorate the outside of the building, but it seems kind of ridiculous. You know, like I hang marble on a building and the rent goes higher. Like you can't even see it from inside the building. It's like
so. This would be in the one of your office buildings.
Yeah. So it's a 20-story building. It's in downtown Dallas, and I want you to be able to order a cappuccino and a bag of freshly made potato chips, and just have it show up at your desk.
Oh, while you're like upstairs working on the 15th floor.
That's right. Like, why is a restaurant in a place?
So would it come up like with a dumbwaiter or something? It would
a runner.
A runner.
Yeah. So instead
I
of
thought
waiters,
there was going to be
runners.
pneumatic tubes or something.
No, we don't have feeding tubes. You know.
No, I didn't mean feeding tubes. Something, some kind of.
No.
Like in 1984, a
runner's going to walk in, put it on your desk, and leave. So it's kind of like Uber meets pizza delivery.
You talk about an idea. People think they have an idea, and it's just going to make money.
Yes.
And I mean, I immediately thought of Edison, Thomas Alva Edison's famous line: "Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration."
Yes. Well, after inventing these lights, I know what he was talking about. They were too hot.
It seems to me like you're into a couple things that are world changing between the software and this restaurant. I mean, are
Well,
you?
the restaurant's not. The software is. Like I have a delusion, and I'm using the term literally, that it's going to organize the world. Like that's what I really believe. Like that everyone will use this for everything. And that cities and states and governments and like this will change the way that people deal with data.
You know, maybe I have a delusion, but I believe you.
You believe me? Okay.
But you want the whole world to be using this software.
Yes. Yes.
You do everything on it.
It does everything. So it sits on top of a whole, like everybody in the company, from the day cleaner who may not even speak English to the owner of the company, uses the same system. And they use it for every single thing that they do. So every task that you do, every checklist that you use, your manual, your reporting, the way you see things, the way you analyze data, the way you understand what just happened and how to do things better, the way you identify talent in a company. I mean, it's endless. It's very hard to say what it does because it does everything. And that everyone says, don't say that. That's the worst thing that you could possibly say. But we decided to try it anyway.
And is this Justin came up with this software?
Yes, Justin was, now we both, it's hard to tell who's doing what, is that this was something that evolved over many, many years. But Justin was definitely the architect of this. Like he really had that vision of how this can actually function.
And does he have a computer background?
He does. So he left. He was there when we were starting Boxer. Then he went to law school, and then he spent some time. We bought a software company that he ran, and then went to Silicon Valley, went to Palo Alto for a few years, and was in the whole first iteration of startups.
Wow.
So it was a lot of lucky accidents that I think may have conspired to produce this thing that we're now out selling. It rolled out of like a lot of things. It started off with writing down manuals, and then having checklists, and then realizing that the checklists, like where do they go after? Where does a checklist go? Where are all our good ideas? Like where's all the information in these binders, and why can't I get it? Justin did a very interesting thing. Is he took a bottle of whiskey and he put it on a podium at a speech, and he said, "Who knows when Alec Guinness died?" And the older people in the audience started conferring with each other. Like, I think he was in Star Wars 6, and like, didn't that come out? And the youngest person raised their phone and said the date.
Interesting.
And the punchline is that all that information is on the internet. Like
Right.
every movie he's ever done, every picture of him, every date that's important is all on the internet. But where's all the information about our business? Why don't we have any information about our business?
That's that accessible.
It's that accessible. So there are things that we will do with data. Like data is property that we just haven't really understood yet, but we should. In other words, we saw Google become arguably the most valuable company in the country. And like, what do they own? What do they do? I don't even know. They have an algorithm that they change every once in a while.
My memory of Justin was he had kind of long hair, nice long dark hair, and sitting and eating popcorn in front of the TV. If I came over to your house, your apartment.
Yeah.
Your mother would make popcorn a lot.
Yeah, we had a microwave. It's new at
Was
the
it
time.
Jiffy Pop or was it
No, it would be microwave, I think.
microwave popcorn?
Yeah. Justin really became a very high quality thinker and kind of a big
Evidently.
thinker. And that, with my delusion of grandeur, is going to propel us into software history at our old age. Be fun for our kids.
Wow. And here it is. The world's going to know about it.
The world is going to know
Here
about it.
first.
We're going to
I got the
organize the
scoop.
world.
I got the
You
scoop.
do. You're the first media that has talked about software.
Wow. You want to change the world.
I want this software product to change the way that we look at relationships of things and people and data and ideas and preserve ideas. We used to have libraries. You used to be able to walk into a library and you could see, the thought, this progression of thought. And now it's electronic. It's disappeared. The books are gone. The books are gone from people's lives. And on a personal basis and on a business basis is no one's keeping notes anymore. Is that things are happening in an unstructured way. As a meeting will happen, a great idea will come up, and it's like an ice sculpture.
What do you think about the fact that you were saying this in a room full of books?
No, I think it is, obviously it's interesting. The question is, like, I used to keep books because I used to think that I would be able to share the book with someone. In other words, I'd be able to walk up to my thing and go to my son and go, here's Catcher in the Rye, you should really read this book, and here's my copy of it. And now that books are electronic, we don't really do that. Like, it's weird. It's like I've got a lot of content on this thing, but I can't share it.
It's funny you're saying that.
Do you have a book you want me to read?
No, my daughter wanted to read Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, there it is. I have my copy from Riverdale, with all the vocabulary words underlined that we were assigned to look up and that we were going to be quizzed on. And she read it and saw each, but it's just what you were saying.
Right, and now, I'm not like a Luddite. I don't think that people should not have technology, and I kind of get it, but it's different. And what's happened is that allowing the ability to store unlimited documents on your computer, like unlimited documents. If I printed up everything on most people's computers, we would fill this room to the ceiling.
Right.
And like the information has gone to a dark place that's not well categorized.
It's not retrievable.
It's not retrievable. It's not usable. It's in all these different sources, and libraries are very inelegant. Like, they're very hard to find. I took my son.
Well, I know where every book is in this library.
Okay, well, I took my son, my eldest son, about 5 years ago, to the stacks of the Stanford Library, and I showed him how we used to retrieve information.
Right.
We went to the card file, and
Yeah.
pulled it out, and we found something, and we went down, 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 and we pulled out a book, and it was a transcript of Question Time in the British Parliament in 1996. And it was this volume, and here was all the questions. And I said, we used to look for information to use in papers and books like this. And he was like looking around like, are you crazy? Like, how would you find anything?
I mean,
That's
we were
insane.
doing things the way they were done probably for 100 years or more. Maybe even
hundreds
of years.
Hundreds of years.
And, well, I don't know when the whole
Gutenberg.
duodecimal
It's a day that Gutenberg.
Yeah, but I don't think the duodecimal system went back that far. But anyway, whatever it was, it's like things were done one way for so long, and then suddenly...
It was just dumb luck. Like, we would go to a library, it'd be dumb luck that they would have a book, and dumb luck that we would find something in it that was worthy of writing about.
Well, that's a very Borgesian thing.
And then we went
coming
from there.
across some book that by accident or something in there. And
I took him from there to Google. I said, these are the people blowing up the libraries. So it's different, but what we've done is we've taken a library that had a librarian who would make sure that the books were there and that they were easy to find. Not an elegant way of finding information, but at least it's all there. And we put it in a dark place, and we let everyone kind of go in and out and mess the whole place up.
Right.
And businesses now are just filled with unstructured, unfindable, unlearnable data. Like, it's gotten worse now.
I work with an organizer, and her big thing is retrievability. that you shouldn't have any possession that you can't retrieve, that you don't know where it is and you can't get to it.
So that's the norm now.
Irretrievability.
It's irretrievability, and the data is so valuable. We don't even know how we're going to use it yet, but having that data is critical.
So basically, your software is for maximum retrievability.
But it's a place to kind of to hang processes, like to have an idea and institutionalize the idea. You know, there are times when you have this great idea. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, and trying to get an institution or your family or sometimes even yourself to do it is very difficult because there is no process. There's no repository that's easier to put the information in than not do it, if that makes sense. You know, in other words, we have to make the process of retrieving the data, using the data, and storing the data easier than not doing it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because if I have to...
If it's too difficult to get to,
right.
You won't.
So, you know, like a Fitbit did that, you know, in some sense. So I wear this thing on my wrist and it tells me how much I walk. And I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is put it on my wrist.
Well, I'll tell you, if you can achieve ultimate retrievability for me, you will save my life, and probably a lot of other people's and a lot of companies.
Yeah, I used to spend a lot of intellectual capital. I used to waste a lot of intellectual capital worrying about whether things that I asked people to do were being done, and whether there were things that I should be doing that I'm not. So I put 2 buttons on my phone. One of them is a list of everything that anyone is asking me to do, or I'm asking myself to do, or a machine is asking me to do. And the other one is a list of everything I've ever asked anyone to do that's not done yet. That freed my mind. I stopped waking up wondering, is this going on? You know, that thing that I asked someone to start working on, like, you know, that takes 3 months and I'm 2 months into it. Is it even going or not? Like, I never have to worry about that again.
And this software does that?
Yes, it's on my phone.
This is part of the software you're talking about?
Yes.
The Stemmons?
Yes. And I put a manual that shows how to do everything.
Is there an app yet for this?
Yeah.
I mean, can you buy it, the Stemmons app?
Nope. I mean, you can install it, but it's kind of got to be linked to a thing. So I put a little button that shows how to do everything in our company. So, like, there it is. There's everything.
It's very clear.
May not even open
visually
up.
It's very clear. Here we are in this retrograde library looking at something virtual that is going to change the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to see me make the library 1,000 times bigger?
Okay. Wow.
There. We've just increased the information.
Well,
by 1,000
everyone
times.
thinks Borges anticipated the internet.
Not the quality.
Okay. Well, I think it was George Orwell who said that mass literacy means, you know, maybe one more genius per generation and 1,000 times more crap.
Right.
So, but anyway, Andrew, I don't think these are delusions of grandeur. I don't know how you come up with this stuff, but you're a true visionary. And this is going to change the world. And you saw it first on Good Vibes and Libes. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great. It's my dinner with Andrew. Okay, we are back to the future. Back to March of 2023. Again, what you just saw was from November of 2016. And that was a lot of fun.
That was.
That's like my dinner with Andrew. It was like when we were kids hanging out.
I do feel like we were just having a conversation, just the two of us.
Right. Well, we were.
And not sitting in a giant studio
This is hardly giant.
Okay, well, it looks big on camera.
That's the wide angle.
Good.
It's actually a pretty tight library, but it's my sanctum.
You're going to have to explain to the young people what these are.
Yeah, it's like trying to explain rotary phones to them. Books. Now, in that interview we did, you mentioned that you took your son to the Stanford Library.
I did. I did.
How old was he at that time?
Oh God, he was very young. I mean, this wasn't. I don't think that he was even in high school. At that point, and as it turned out, he returned as a student and spent 5 years there.
Wow, and he's still there.
He's still there. He's doing his master's.
In what?
Philosophy.
That was my major.
I know that. I was a very big proponent of the humanities. I thought it was very important not to waste your time in college studying almost anything but the humanities. And so I'm happy that he took that track.
So didn't you say don't waste your time?
I said don't waste your time in college not taking the humanities.
And why is that?
Because it's such a unique experience to really get a feel for the big picture and to kind of exercise your brain, to kind of tap into these giants who came before us in thought and history and action, and learning, learning something that's more of a trade now, I think is just not a good way to use those years. I think that there's a time to learn how to do something. I don't want a philosopher doing brain surgery on me, or building a rocket ship that I'm going to be on. But, I want someone with a very wide picture, a very wide experience.
Yeah, someone who's a generalist as well as a specialist.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Mark Cuban says the philosophy is the major to take, much more than computer science, because computer science is all going to be automated soon. But you need to learn how to think critically.
Well, I think we've been saying things are going to be automated soon for a long time. But
Well, I'm just
I
quoting
do
Mark
agree
Cuban.
with him.
Yeah.
I do agree with him.
Well, I think entrepreneurs tend to be, the good ones, the really good ones like yourself, tend to be quite philosophical when I interview them. And they often will spontaneously use the word philosophy. They'll talk about my philosophy.
We just do that to show off. That's called pseudo-intellectual.
Right, which is what you claimed you were last time about real estate, which
Yes.
you before you started actually doing it.
Yes, well, now I'm 31 years into it, so I'm fairly experienced.
You're not
at this
pseudo
point.
anymore.
No.
So, what is going on with Stemmons?
So Stemmons is still progressing. At the time that we talked last time, I thought that there would be a line out the door of people, and it turns out that we're kind of in more of a hobbyist mode. So there's been some really interesting adaptations of it, but we're still not at the wide popularization point. Although it's been, for me, on a personal basis, it's been a real treat to kind of use this type of system to run my business. It's made what I do fun and not monotonous.
But it hasn't changed the world yet?
It has not changed the world yet, but there's still time.
Okay. So we were both deluded a little bit.
Well, we were optimists.
Okay.
Now we're old enough we can be pessimists.
Well, I'm still.
An old optimist.
You lured me into your delusion of grandeur, so I don't want to give up that delusion. You still think it could?
Yes. No, I'm very excited about it. We're doing some very interesting
it's
things.
taken longer than you would have guessed.
Yeah, I think it's I think it was Bill Gates who said that everyone overestimates what they can do in a year and underestimates what they could do in a decade.
Right. Was it Bill Gates who said that? It's a great quote.
It sounds like Yogi Berra, but I think it was Bill Gates.
Yeah, it's excellent. And what about the restaurant in Dallas?
The restaurant in Dallas, we switched to a vegan concept. The building emptied out during COVID, and so we decided to do something interesting with it. So now it's called BELSE, and it's a fully vegan restaurant, and we're trying to get a more artsy crowd in the building. So we're happy with it. It's been It's been the new concept for several years now.
But what about the whole, you order everything, and there are no waiters, and you order on their phone, and whatever the chef has available is what you can order, and it's delivered to you wherever you are. It could be in the park across the street, or is that still happening?
So it's still app. It's still app based. That's still the way you order it, and that's exactly the way it works. But in these downtown buildings, a lot of people stopped coming into work.
Right.
So that was a big difference. So now the restaurant, ironically, is much busier on the weekends than it is during the weekdays. I think that'll change, though.
Well, you bring up, I mean, when we last met in this room, it was pre-COVID, and it's now post-COVID, or at least post-public health emergency, I should say. So it's a very, very different, I mean, first of all, that's not something I ever could have foreseen or imagined. I don't know about you.
You didn't work in a Chinese lab?
No, but I mean, you know, my grandma Lily, who died at the age of 99 in the early 2000s, and I interviewed her, and she told me about the flu epidemic, and people were just, and she lived in New York. I mean, she was at that time a teenager, and people were just dropping dead on the street. You know, it was like the bubonic plague. It was. But it wasn't something the idea of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, he predicted a pandemic.
Well, what was interesting is that I got it very early. I got it in the first week of COVID.
Oh, wow.
I was an early adapter. And I didn't know that I had it. I had a very, very mild thing, and I wasn't showing all the symptoms. And then about a month later, we were able to test for antibodies. And as soon as I realized that I had it, I went out and I traveled the world. I went to Europe, I went to India, I went all over the United States, I went to the Caribbean, and I just decided that I was going to be immune.
Your reaction is atypical. I got it, so I'm going to travel the world.
Well, I just decided I was immune.
And did you get it again?
No, I did not. I'm trying to think whether I got it again. I did not get it again. But I did take all the vaccines, and I had this theory that the doctors told me was idiotic, but not necessarily wrong, is that if I keep exposing myself to it in small doses, that I'll remain immune.
Well, I'll tell you, you're lucky your case was mild, because I know someone who got it early who's suffering from long COVID, and it's brutal.
Yes. No, I'm not making light of it.
Yeah. What is that? I mean, you've been in commercial real estate. So what did the pandemic mean for your business? I know in New York, they're having trouble.
Yeah, so commercial real estate had like a series of 4 gut punches. You know, the first was COVID, where it was closed and no one was going to the office. Then people started this, I'm going to work from home, hybrid work thing, and that caused problems in the office market. And then the next thing is, because they were packing up and moving out every evening and moving back in every morning, the amount of stuff that they had to conduct their job shrank tremendously into a backpack, basically. So people were using a lot less space. So that was like gut punch number 3. So number 1, they leave the office. Number 2, they hardly come. Number 3, they hardly use any space. And then finally, interest rates go up, as if the other 4 were bad. But what we found is that in instances where the companies are smaller, and in instances where people don't rely on public transportation, they're coming back to the office very fast. And I think it's an exciting time. We never allowed, if we weren't prohibited by law from having every single person in the office, we allowed no remote work, period. You know, we just did not allow it. It's a day off. You know, it doesn't exist. There's no working from somewhere else. And it
Through
allowed
all of COVID, your people came in?
Yes. Anytime it was legal for them to be in the office, they had to be in the office.
So you like your people in the office?
I relish the chance to compete with other companies that are working remotely. It's like, it's unfair. I mean, we're killing them. You know, these other companies, they don't answer their phone. Friday just is not even a work day. It's been amazing to compete with companies that are not together. And part of the reason is that I think that we all have two jobs. You know, I have two jobs. Everyone in my company has two jobs. One job is your job, and the other job is to be a mentor. And if you're a security guard or a doorman or a day cleaner or something, you're still a mentor. You're showing a new person how to do things. If you're the CFO, you're showing the treasurer how to do things. Is that we're interacting with people in teams, and when we scatter everyone, it feels fine for the first, you know, day or two or month or maybe even year. But then when you start having new people join the company, it's a disaster. So it'd be like saying, why doesn't everybody just take Harvard classes online? Like, in other words, they can educate an unlimited amount of people if people just watched a video of a professor. But I think we would realize is that those people wouldn't have gone to Harvard.
Yeah, and I've spoken to kids who, you know, how was Brown? The girl said, "Oh, wow, I don't know. I was there a semester and a half."
Yeah.
You know, and I'd have to ask about remote learning, but I suspect that it was much tougher. I think
It wasn't tougher. It's just worthless.
Yeah. I mean, tougher to learn stuff. You know, I read that there are law firms in New York that are not only requiring the lawyers back to the office, but in suits and ties. And you're in a suit and tie, I'm in a blazer and tie. But that's encouraging.
That's old school. They're going to be wearing hats soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if they go that far. But you know, I guess they realize that people are not working as well or as professionally if they're remote and if they come in underdressed.
There is just no way to onboard a new person into the culture and the practice of a business remotely. Like, I'll just say that, period. I do not see it.
Now, you use the word culture.
Mm-hmm.
And does your company have a strong sense of culture?
Yes.
What is your culture?
It is data-driven, massively organized.
So in effect, the Stemmons software came out of your company culture.
It's the spiritual embodiment of the culture.
It's the metaphysical manifestation.
It's the digital twin, whatever you want to call it. But it is the culture. You know, it's almost like telling a young person, I want you to have a means of communication with you all the time. They'd be like, yeah, I'm never going to have my phone more than like a arm's length away
Right.
for the rest of my life. It will be the last thing I'm tweeting on my deathbed. Guess where I'm going. But like, it's so natural to have people there. You don't have to force your kids to keep their phones near them.
Right.
And that's what I think. You can call it a culture, or you could call it a habit or a way of life. That's what we've adopted in the companies that I'm involved in.
So get back to the office. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying, well, don't if you're competing with me. You stay right at home with the dog and the cat and the refrigerator and, you know, yeah, like.
Do you think there will be a return to offices?
I do. I think the companies that don't return will just end up out of business.
Right.
There's no way. They cannot afford, they don't have the margin to compete with people who are getting a full work week.
Well, we're sitting here talking face to face.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think it's very important.
Yeah.
You know, we're human beings and we pick up on things. And the problem is that when people are dealing remote, they do other things. They look at other things, their hands are there, you know.
Right.
We at our company, now we do a lot of video things because we're in a real estate company, we're in 150 locations, but we always make people have the camera on. And I'm getting to the point where I may want to see their hands.
To ensure they're not texting.
Like, in other words, you may have to sit and talk like this to me. Otherwise, I'm not interested in having a conversation with someone who's
Get your elbows
cruising on
off
the
the
internet.
table.
There we go. Someone will invent fake hands at some point, I'm sure.
Wow. Well, in Zoom calls, one or two guys have gotten in some trouble with what they were doing with their hands.
Yes, that's right. You don't see that. Well, actually, you do in Hollywood, but I was going to say you don't see that as much in person, but sometimes you do.
What about your restaurant in New York?
We closed it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it didn't.
It was a good place.
I loved it.
Yeah, it
But
was a great place.
It was a brewery and a vegan restaurant.
Right.
And I think that there was somewhat of a conflict between the kind of people who like breweries and the kind of people who like vegan restaurants, not necessarily the same people.
How did you come up with that combination?
Well, it was an existing brewery.
It was already there. The
Yes.
brewery. Okay.
But we probably should have de-emphasized.
Should have made
the
it a
brewery.
steakhouse or something like that.
Well, like as a vegetarian, that would not be as much fun for me.
Are you a vegetarian?
I am. I'm vegish.
You're vegish?
Well, it's like my religion.
No kidding.
Ish.
When did when did that start?
About 6 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
And why?
So my sister told me to read a book. The book's called The China Study. Don't read it if you want to continue eating meat. Like, just don't do it, or just wait. And it's, it's a book about health, and it's about things that weren't necessarily problems for me in particular, but they made an argument that it was better. I'll just summarize. It's better to not eat meat.
And this was this after our interview 6 years ago? Because was this how you lost
It was probably pretty close. No, the weight was more just like concentrating on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
On weight. That wasn't about vegan.
I don't think so.
Because you can be vegan and be heavy.
Yes. Yes. Have you ever seen a cow?
Yes.
Heavy and vegan.
Yeah. And a bit idle,
Yes.
a bit sluggish.
They all eat salad all day.
Yeah. We're eating grass all day. Did we mention earlier that we lost weight since the last interview?
Oh, yes, we did.
We did say that?
Yes, after seeing ourselves on camera, we were like, okay.
We better lose some weight. And we both did.
Yes.
Yeah. You lost quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I'm not taking my shirt off or anything.
Well, the point of this meeting was just to wrap up what we had done. Is there anything you want to update us on from what we talked about 6 years ago? Different perspectives?
Yeah, I think a lot of it still rings true. Like when I watched it again, it was interesting because certainly the theories and, I had some different opinions about where different things would go. One of the things I did not see coming 6 years ago was that there was an aspect of the software company that allowed us to run very large offices overseas in India and later Honduras and Mexico City. And because of the software, we were able to run, place large numbers of employees, for us over 300 in different countries. And that turned out to be a spectacularly popular spin-off. So we made the ability to host people like a server, like a cloud server, where you have a person instead of a computer, and they're somewhere else, but someone else is taking care of everything. That spun out of the software company and became its own thing, and is now growing very fast.
Okay. And you're going to have to explain this all to me.
Okay.
As if I'm the tech idiot that I am.
Okay. Essentially, it's back office on demand.
Essentially, it's back office on demand. What is back office? Oh, you mean like the people who work in the back office?
Yes. So it's people who support the primary business. They're on demand and they're somewhere else. And it's a service to provide those people immediately.
I'm trying to follow this. So, are these office buildings in other countries?
So we build out offices, we staff them with people, and then other companies can take control of the people as full-time employees, but we do everything. We have their desk and their computer and their benefits and their food and their salary and their bonuses, and we just take care of everything. The company in the US is the one who directs them. So it's like an instant, full-time, dedicated employee who just happens to be overseas.
Had you not done overseas prior to Stemmons?
We had, but what we did was we allowed other people to use our people overseas if they were software clients. So it was very entwined in the software. And then we realized, wait a second, this is what more people want to do. So we turned that into its own company. It came out of the software company.
Okay.
And now it's growing very fast. It's a human cloud.
Okay.
You're having a hard time.
Yeah, I would like you, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, if you can explain this to a 10-year-old.
Okay.
I mean, really get basic.
Okay, so I go to India, I build out an office, I furnish it, I buy computers, I hook it up to the internet, and then I hire 30 people. I spend several months onboarding these people into, this is how you work in a US office, these are the norms, this is how some of the programs work, and they could be accountants or architects or HR people. And then I put them on a bench. It's an electronic bench.
You're not electrocuting them, are you?
No.
What do you mean electronic bench?
It's a bench on the web.
So you're using the term bench like a baseball bench.
Yes. So like if you're a coach and you need someone to go in, you just turn around, you go to the bench and you go, you're in. But what if you did that with your accounting department? So what we've said is we want hiring to be the way that a coach puts people into a game. So what happens is you have players, they've been recruited, they've suited up, they're sitting in the stadium on the bench. They each have different skills. Some are centers, some are forwards, some are guards. And there they are. And when you want someone, when you need a certain player, you turn around and you say, you're in. And what we've done is we've done this with accountants.
With accountants.
And architects. And personal assistants. And people who can work in HR departments, and people who work on help desks, and people who lease things.
So if a company needs someone, they go to
They go to the bench, they select a person, and that person is already hired. They're already in the office. They're ready to go in a minute.
And the bench is not specifically that company's bench. It's your bench.
It's our bench, and they take a player in a minute. Or you may decide it's not working and send them back down to the bench and someone else will take them.
So you're already paying these people.
Yes. So what we're doing is we're hiring people first and then deploying them second.
So these are your employees.
Yeah, they're technically our employees, just like Hertz owns the car, but it doesn't know where the car's going.
Right.
It's Hertz Rent-A-Car, but for people. So think about Hertz, where you could keep the car forever or you could return it. Hertz has already bought the car. They've licensed the car. They've checked the oil. They have checked the tires. And you just come in and roll in, get in the car, drive out the door. You may keep it a day or you may keep it 10 years. It doesn't matter to us.
And who pays you for this?
So the clients pay us.
The company. That's the one who's hiring the person.
The client pays just one fee and it covers everything. It covers their internet, their computer, their office, their desk, their benefits, their bonus. So it solves a lot of the problems that we have now. We've solved the I don't want to go to work problem. We've cut the cost of the people by 70 or 80% if you're in a place like New York. And we've made onboarding people instantaneous. We just thought of it as like adjacent to the software. But it turned out that it was of much greater interest to the public.
Can you demonstrate some of this?
Sure. So there are people who we've pre-hired. They have resumes, so you can hit and you could see a resume of theirs. So this is a little hard to see. Here's an accountant. Or you can watch an interview with the person. So they all have had their interviews videoed so that you don't have to waste time. Because we've all been in an interview where you know after 2 minutes this is not going to work out.
Right.
And then you have to fake it for 20 minutes. So here's an interview of the person. And then if you want them, you just hit select. So it's instant, full-time, pre-onboarded employees.
They only work in your offices?
We don't, yes, they work in our offices in India. We have offices in Roatan, which is an island off of Honduras. And we have offices in Mexico City.
So they only work in Boxer property offices?
Well, it's a different company now.
Oh.
And that was the interesting thing, is that we thought we were selling software and we were doing this as a accommodation to the software. It turns out that people were more interested in this on a wide basis than the software.
But when you say they're only working in your offices, in other words, an accountant wouldn't go to another company.
No.
Wouldn't go work for a brokerage house.
Well, they do work for a brokerage house, but they're sitting in our office.
And they're doing it remotely.
It's remote, except they're there with a team. So they sit in our office on our chair, working on our computer over our internet, but we don't see what they're doing. They're working for a different company is telling them what to do. We're just taking care of everything else.
Okay. So it's not, because before you were sort of knocking remote work. So this isn't remote in the same way.
No, this is very different. This is working in an office with your peers, onboarding new people, working as a team.
But you're working as a team for someone who may be across the world somewhere else.
Yes, but most companies have several floors of buildings. They have different locations. So this is just another location. That part's not very unusual.
So now, is this Stemmons or a different software?
It started embedded in Stemmons, and then it was a service that was attached to Stemmons that became much more interesting to the public than Stemmons itself.
And what's it called?
It's called Relay Human Cloud.
Relay Human Cloud.
Yes. Relay, like relay race, like handing the baton around the world, human cloud.
And when did this start?
This started less than 2 years ago.
So it's 2023 now, so that was 2021 or later.
Yeah. COVID.
COVID. So this is a COVID baby.
It's a COVID baby because everybody realized that they could work remotely. And they also realized the things that they didn't like about working remotely.
What don't they like?
They don't like the fact that it's very hard to onboard new people. Like a new person shows up at the office, no one's there.
Right.
It's extremely hard.
Has this been invented before, or is this a new invention of yours?
There's many things that use different parts of this. So if I go with the car analogy, yes, people have been selling transportation, for a long time. People rent transportation. They drive their chauffeurs. There's all sorts of iterations of it. But we feel like we've created a very elegant solution, is that we've made the people instant, and we've built a better person by onboarding them for several months. And there's no negotiation, there's no giving notice, is that they just join the team. And they only work in our offices, which means that if people have several team members, they work all together.
Was Justin part of this new software development?
Oh yes, Justin was the center of it.
He could go down as a big name in software history.
Yes, no, he is. He is very talented.
Yeah.
He's also a very good storyteller. If you've seen, he's the narrator on all of the Stemmons movies.
Really?
Yes.
Does he do the voiceover?
He does.
And does he have a good voice?
He's got a very good voice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
No,
You sure?
probably not, but
All right. Well, thanks for coming back to continue My Dinner with Andrew.
thank you for having me.
And we should go get some dinner and explore New York like we did in the old days.
Let's go to a diner.
Yeah, exactly. Or the West End Bar of blessed memory, our old stomping grounds.
It was the pub. It was our local.
It was like the diner in the movie Diner.
It was. It was our third place.
Right, right. And thank you for watching, and see you next time on Good Vibes and Libes. Take care.